Well, what's up again there, guys? Brian here, D3 Topics Gamer, and I have a pretty exciting top 5 list video to share with you guys today. Now, recently, they announced that they will be re-releasing two of my all-time favorite Star Wars games of all time in the form of Star Wars, the OG Star Wars Battlefront 1, and especially Battlefront 2. When I saw this announcement, I literally screamed with excitement because for the longest time, this game in particular, the true Star Wars Battlefront 2, was my all-time favorite Star Wars video game of all time. That was, however, until Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order was able to just do enough to slightly dethrone it. But hey, that doesn't mean that I'm still not excited to replay this game, because when this game came out in 2005, around the time that Revenge of the Sith came out, I was hooked. I was addicted to this game, and I am just so excited that I will get a chance to revisit my addiction all over again as a 32-year-old man. However, now that they've decided they want to release a couple of these classic Star Wars games, that got me thinking, what are some other classic Star Wars video games that haven't been re-released yet that I think would make for a great addition to want to revisit on current-gen consoles? So I have 5 classic Star Wars games that I think should be re-released. Now, if you do happen to enjoy this list by the end, please do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to keep tracking me on all my future videos. And remember, if you guys have any ideas for future reactions, top list videos, worst to best rankings, please let me know those ideas in the comments down below, and I will try to get them up as soon as I can. So, if I'm wasting any more time, let's start off with number 5 on my list. Number 5 on the list is going to have to go to Star Wars Jedi Knight Dark Forces 2. Now, this game came out in, I believe, the mid to late 90s, and the primary plot revolves around my favorite post-Return of the Jedi character in the form of Kyle Katarn, who is a big character in the after events of Revenge of the Return of the Jedi in the novels and comics and stories. This kind of centers on his character trying to get revenge on Inquisitor Jarek, who is also a pretty significant Legends character now that Disney has made all those post things not canon anymore. And what I really liked about this game is that it had 2 different types of gameplay style. There was like a first-person point of view and a point of view at third person where you could play wielding a lightsaber. And I think that updating this, perhaps tweaking the gameplay a little bit, improving some of the visuals, keeping the cutscenes the same, maybe enhancing them a little bit if you can, I think would make for a great game and a great way to introduce a new generation to these legend characters that no one really knows about. If you weren't really there to experience these characters, you probably have no idea who Kyle Katarn is and just how awesome he is and just how important of a character he will become, and one of Grandmaster Luke Skywalker's greatest allies that we probably will never get a chance to see on the big screen. So I think re-releasing this game, adding just a few little updates, would be a great game that I think a lot of people would be interested into, and that's why it's number 5 on my list. Going into number 4 is a game that was extremely successful during the PlayStation 3, Xbox 360 era, and that game just so happens to be Star Wars The Force Unleashed 1. Perhaps we don't need to talk about Force Unleashed 2 for obvious reasons, but I would absolutely flip if I had a chance to replay this again on the PlayStation 4 or even PlayStation 5. Now, in many cases, this was actually a pre-version of what Jedi Fallen Order would eventually become, but pretty much all this does is give you a lightsaber, a number of force powers, and just asks you to go to town and go as crazy as you want. Now, the primary story revolves around the character of Galen Merrick, or he goes by the codename Starkiller, and he is the secret apprentice of Darth Vader. And over the course of the game, he's given multiple assignments by Darth Vader to hunt down some survivors of Order 66. And afterwards, something happens that will eventually lead to Galen needing to do certain actions, which will ultimately lead to the creation of the Rebel Alliance. I think that the gameplay for this was very, very simple. This is easily a game that anyone could pick up, play, and have a fun time. Now, much like the Battlefront 1 and Battlefront 2 OG kind of co-pack release, if they did decide to want to re-release on Force Unleashed 2 as a bundle pack with this game, I'll be totally okay with it. But overall, I do think that this is a game that is well worth being released. This did come out during the HD period, so I don't think it would be too hard to re-release this. And maybe, I don't know, maybe it's available in some form on PlayStation 4 or playable in some sense. I don't know, but I would absolutely be up for playing a slightly enhanced version of this classic HD awesome Star Wars game, which is why it's number 4 on my list. Going into number 3 is easily one of my all-time favorite Star Wars video games that is based off of one of the Star Wars movies, and that is in the form of Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith, the game. Now, this game actually did release around the time of the actual release of the actual movie, but unlike a lot of these kind of movie-based video games, this one is actually really, really good. It's an action platform that allows you to play through the events of Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith as Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker. And the thing I like about this is that not only is it kind of like an action platformer adventure game, but it actually, in some cases, when you take on another Force user, it kind of goes into like kind of like a head-to-head fighter in which you take control of one character and you can actually battle another in kind of like a fight arena style. And on top of that, there were also a number of extras, including alternate endings that could actually show you what happens if Anakin Skywalker was able to beat Obi-Wan Kenobi, or what was Yoda doing in order to take back the Jedi Temple. And there's even a mode that allows you to kind of play this game as a fighting game, and there's a series of Force users and Jedi and Sith that you can choose from, and just have them fight each other. This was a fun game when it came out in 2005, and again, 2005 was a great year for Star Wars because we had Battlefront 2, we had this game, and we had Revenge of the Sith. So I think re-releasing this game would really make a lot of people excited who grew up with the prequels like I did, which is why it's number 3 on my list. Number 2 on my list, we are going to have to go way back to the N64 era and go to what was easily one of the most revolutionary Star Wars games at the time in the form of Star Wars Shadows of the Empire. Now you have to remember, Shadows of the Empire was a really big deal when it came out at the time because there was an entire major set of campaign around Shadows of the Empire. This was perhaps the most amount of concentrated Star Wars content that we had since Return of the Jedi had been released back in, I believe, the 80s. So they really were pushing the storyline. I mean, it had its own game, it had a novel, it had a soundtrack, it had an entire toy line dedicated to it. So I think getting a chance to kind of update this game and replay it would be a great way for not only older fans who enjoyed this game when it came out for N64, but a lot of younger fans who probably don't even know this game exists or understand its significance. Now, the story for Shadows of the Empire takes place between the events. Some events happen during Empire Strikes Back, but most of it takes place in between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. And the primary character is Dash Rendar, who is, captain of the Outrider, which is my personal favorite Star Wars ship in the franchise. And you pretty much go on these certain missions in order to kind of find out exactly what's going on and deal with, a criminal organization named Black Sun and having to fight with the Empire and going all these crazy missions. Now, the thing that Shadows of the Empire did as well as it could have been, it's not perfect, but I think they did a really good job, is it had multiple different variety of different types of missions. This was an action shooter platformer. There's an entire section that has you control 2 different crafts in the form of the speeder during the Battle of Hoth and another one at the end. There's a gun turret scene where you're flying through asteroids trying to shoot down TIE fighters and TIE bombers. There's a mission that has you take control of a speeder as you're trying to race through Mos Eisley trying to get to Luke Skywalker before a bunch of bounty hunters hunt him down and kill him. So I really give Shadows of the Empire a lot of credit for being able to have multiple different types of gameplay styles. Now, to be fair, the developers didn't say that they did as well as they could have, but I think that for what we got at the time, I think it's a phenomenal game. Yeah, it's not perfect and it's got some issues, but I think that with as much time has passed, I think you could actually tweak this game a little bit, improve some of the visuals, maybe add in a gameplay function that allows you to control your aiming a little bit better, and maybe make the controls a little less kind of slippery, if you know what I mean, if you've played this game. I would love to see this game get re-released, and heck, I would even go so far as to say this is a game I would love to see get remade, which is why it's number 2 on my list. But the Hoth mission, which is the first mission in this game that you get to play, inspired what I believe is the number 1 game that should absolutely be re-released. And that game happens to be one of the greatest Star Wars games ever released in the form of Star Wars Rogue Squadron. This is the quintessential Star Wars flight simulator shooter of all time. Now, this has a wide spread of missions, and this was very much created from the team that actually made, or at least it was kind of built on top of or around the very first Hoth mission, Battle of Hoth from Shadows of the Empire. A number of those elements were just brought right, and they just made an entire game around there, and I think that was a brilliant idea. There are a wide spread of ships for both the Empire, I believe maybe the Empire. maybe not the Empire, maybe just the Rebel Alliance, but there's a great number of ships to take part in. There's a number of missions that have different objectives. There's actually a really solid plot that plays through, and you pretty much take control of Luke Skywalker as he's attempting to lead Rogue Squadron through all these crazy missions all across the galaxy and just battle the Empire. And I think that the challenge factor and the visual style is great. Now, they did release another Rogue Squadron game on the GameCube, and I actually wouldn't mind seeing that get re-released. And they did bring the franchise back for the PlayStation 4 era. But my biggest issue with that game was I just hated that you could only play that game from the cockpit. I really like playing flight simulators or Star Wars flight games in general when you actually get to see your vehicle. And that's something that not only this, but the sequel to Rogue Squadron and heck, even Battlefront managed to get right. But apparently the newest version of Rogue Squadron just couldn't. But yeah, this, above all classic Star Wars games, is the one that I would love to replay again, just with updated graphics and perhaps some slightly tweaked controls. So those are my top 5 classic Star Wars games that I think should be re-released. Now, if you are a Star Wars fan or you've played a series of classic Star Wars games, what games would you like to see get re-released? Let me know in the comments down below. And like always, thank you guys for watching. You're awesome, and I'll see you guys next time.